Hello and welcome, wonderful adventurers. This is the second tutorial in the series where we're making this puzzle game. And if you followed along in the first tutorial, you'll see where we loaded the game and you probably didn't have any nodes. And what happened was I ended up making a tutorial for it, and it was uh, almost 2 hours long. So I want to see if I can make it go a little bit faster this time. Right now I have the AI running this game, so later on we may implement that in if there's enough interest in that video there. So I'm just going to explain a couple of things that with the notes here, how I set things up and why I set them up in certain ways, and how I actually go about with the whole making of most of my games. So in this first node, our root node here is a canvas layer, and typically we'll use that for our HUD, and sometimes you can use it for anything, but initially I started it out for because I wanted to separate this control with our other controls. So that is why I did that. So let's take a look at this first control area, and if you look at just a regular control node, and if you see these green lines here, or dots, rather kind of pins, if you zoom in you can see them a little better. If you see these here, those are the anchors, and it kind of locks the node in place with the the um, the canvas layer. So that's what those are basically for. Now you can see that as we have it selected, if I move this around, well, that is actually the wrong one. So what I'm going to do is show you another thing. If you're having trouble clicking a certain node, and there's a node underneath it, then it may not let you. So if we use this lock button, and it locks it in over here, sometimes we can select the node underneath. Now if I move that, you can see that the anchors are staying in place. But when you see that I moved this one, the anchors moved with it. And that is the reason why initially I put at least one control node under when I'm going to have other nodes that are control nodes doing things in the scene that are mostly position specific, and also I don't want them to stretch out too big or get too small. For instance, for this top border node that we have here, it's just a color rect, and I have it squeezed down to 64, but you can make it any size. And over here you just choose your color, and you can choose the positions, and you can also may want to choose to filter the mouse to ignore. It may not affect anything, but with control nodes they have a tendency to stop input from processing through. And so if we go here and we see that I put a score label node there, and I put another label inside of this label, and I kind of do that on purpose because when I look up this label, what I'll say is score label amount dot text equals, and that's how we change this amount here. And I did change the vertical on this, and I left the horizontal alignment to the left on purpose because I want it to stay to the left. If you can do center or to the right, but like I said, for this one I will just stay left. And there's another thing that we can do here. So if you see that this node has something here called label settings, both of them do, and you can see where I set in this one the label settings. So I chose new label settings, and I chose here to quick load a font, and I told you in the first tutorial, the first video of this tutorial, that I deleted all the other fonts except for the font that I chose, and that was this one. So I located that one, and quick load usually will find your font. So if not, then you'll have to navigate through your files and find it. So choose that, and I also chose the color to be black, and I chose the text size to be 32. That is the outline, and I went there. So that was in this one, but for this one I did it a little different to show you that there's a more robust way of adding font to labels. This one will give you a little bit more options that you can do a couple different more things with. But you set it the same way here. You just click load and it will go to the same thing. You got your font sizes, and in all labels and most control nodes will have a style. Well, this label has a style, and it only has one style, and it's more or less a background. I won't show you on this node, but I'll show you on another node, our buttons. And I set the color to black here on the theme overrides. But you don't have to do it that way. Like I said, you can do it in label settings. So the vertical alignment, remember, keep that center if you like the look of it there. And I did set a button over here, and that is placed from our puzzle game UI buttons. So what I did was I came here and I chose Atlas texture, and that just opens up this little new window here, and it'll show that it's empty. And you see that mine went away, but yours won't have anything in it. And so what you do is you grab your buttons. Let me just, there it is. And then we go to edit region, and now we choose which button style or grid square that we want for our button. And that one was for normal, and that is our normal. And that's all you do to change these. And you type in UI pause here. And this is the unique thing about Touch 2D button. You can make the input in your input settings, and you can use that here. And then you can also use it in your code anywhere as an input. So you won't even have to put a signal to this node. And there's even more that you can do with this, and I'll show you a lot more to come, like setting a shape to it. You don't even have to set a picture. It could be almost like a multi-touch input. So with that, now we have what I call our side border, and that was an image from over here, puzzle border. And if you choose the side border, you can see that I got keep on the sides. If you choose not to keep, what that does is if you try to stretch it out, you see that it scales. There's other options in it, but we're going to choose keep. And you don't necessarily have to choose keep, but choosing keep just does that. So if the size of the scene actually changes, this shape will not change. So that's all I did with that. And to set that in there, you just drag this over and set it in. And for background image, if we open that up and we can look at that, I extended it out and anchored as I did with all my nodes. And when I put the picture in, and you'll see initially on yours it will probably look like this, but if you choose ignore, it is squeezed down to whatever size you want, most likely to the size of your actual window, and then you can adjust it the same right here. And I just have it sitting inside here locked with pixels. And the reason you can have it behind, obviously, but for me, I'm just going to leave it like that. So that's it for the actual HUD area layout background, and we have this one more piece to that, and it is our next piece control. So I actually adjusted the size of the border, or next piece control, to be a minimum of 384 by 64. So that way it fits in here perfectly. It won't go anywhere else, and everything that's inside of it will move accordingly to the nodes that are also inside of it. So for instance, I put this center container in, and the center container is pretty unique as it forces everything to the center. One thing you gotta watch out for a center container is if you don't set minimum sizes on nodes inside of it, and it could squish it down to the tiniest amount, and you wouldn't even be able to see it. So the next node in there is a grid node, and all that does is line up nodes that are inside of it, but they have to be control nodes. Of course, I extended it out and I customized the minimum size again to 384 just to keep everything consistent with these, and also to make sure that if the level got moved or scaled, that it would keep its same scaling in position. And then I placed another center container, actually 6 of them, inside of this grid. And over here, if you see on the grid, you can set the number of columns that are actually in the grid. And the normal setting for the theme overrides on a grid is set like this. So normally if you don't set anything, it'll just look like that. But if you tell it that you want to actually set it at 0, it'll start at 0, and then you can extend it out to have it look like you want. But I want it at 0. Now, as I told you before, the center container will always squish everything down to its minimum size. And if you notice over here, I set its minimum size to 64 by 64, and that's purposely so it will evenly space out in the grid. Since our game is based on a grid, that makes it look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. So I have the custom minimum size now set at 48 by 48 to these texture rects that I set. Just basically, if you can see, these nodes are even blinking. And what I did was I come over here and you say you want to make this a animated texture. Choose animated texture, and this menu will pop up and make them look funny purple. Choose to open it, add 2 frames to it, 1, 2. Come over here and grab your happy frame 1 and put that in the 0 frame, and then grab happy frame germ 2, put that in this frame. And just like we did in the tile map, if you haven't seen that one, we can change these settings. Well, you probably haven't seen that one because that's actually in the next tutorial. So, but there's an animation tutorial that I made similar to this game that I actually believe that he used part of this game on. So I did set some things over here. You want to ignore size, and you also want to keep aspect ratio centered. And that will force this to stay centered no matter how big it is, because we'll be scaling the size later. So for that will be it for these. We made 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And remember, so we're going to see the grid here shortly. So for what I call my animating nodes is all these sprite 2Ds. And if we highlight this and then we take a look at them all, they're already just sitting here waiting on us to tell them what to do. Now, what I did was to set this, you go here, you can change the names of your animations. There's one animation, I can default animation, and you just choose new or change that name and then add your frames here. And when you choose new, you can name them. I want happy as an auto start, so I choose auto start, and I also want it to loop, so I choose loop. We have pop, and you can see that I haven't chose loop, and I also haven't chose auto start, and the same with sat. So the reason why I put all of these in together is they can play a pivotal role in choosing our tile map. Since we really can't actually move our tile map, I just kind of want to add a node to simulate some better animations, different animations. And I could do this with the tile map. We could just add more animations, but it would also grow the tile map. And I thought, well, this might be a little bit more funner, a little bit more easier if funner is funner. So with Happy, what I did was you click on here, and you can actually add Happy once here with the blinkies and stuff, but you can also do it this way, and I'll show you this way. So you choose here, and then you set your grid size in 64 by 64, and you highlight the ones you want, and I only chose the first two, and I added them. And then after that, what I did was I just grabbed this second frame, and I copied it, and I pasted it in there to be in here 8 times total, but it is a 7 frames. And that's how frames are indexed. They are like arrays. They index at 0, they start at 0, and they end one number less than the frame amount. So keep that in mind. Over here, when you need to actually open this up, so when you first select your animation node and you add it in, you'll have a warning, and what you do is just come over here and choose new sprite frames, and this window will open up down here, and then you walk through and do the things that I was suggesting. Otherwise, you can also take your sprites straight over and just copy them in. However, you can't do that to an atlas. You would have to do this if you do an atlas. But if you have just straight frames like this, you can copy them over and just paste them in, and then copy and paste whatever. And there's also this that you can do. You can move them through with this. You can add empties at the end, which sometimes I do to kind of simulate a disappearing act before they're deleted or something. That way I don't have to call hide. So with that, there's a lot of sprites here in total. As you can see, it's numbered them down to 48, and all that is are 6 nodes here by 8, so 8 times 6, and that's 48 nodes, obviously. And for our real HUD, and I'm going to call it the real HUD because it's sitting on the top, let's open it up and take a look at it. And first, what you'll see is you have 2 different controls, and I didn't place them inside of an extra control just because I was being lazy. So suggest probably if you want to do it, but that's up to you. And in this case, so far I haven't seen any issues, and I'm going to leave it this way. So initially what we have here is our canvas layer, and if you take a look at it, nothing's changed in it. It's sitting the same as this canvas layer. Normally you can adjust these layers and make this one sit on top of the canvases more. You can follow viewports, which basically they already do. So as long as there's a camera in the scene and the camera is moving, anything that is inside a canvas layer that's a canvas item, I believe should move, especially control nodes. 2D nodes, they usually move too. I haven't seen any that haven't, including tile maps. So this game doesn't have a camera, if you haven't noticed, and that's for the reason because we don't even need to move anything, so there's no reason to actually add a whole nother node. So we have this here, and we have this first control, and all it does is basically simulate a loading scene. It's not even real. It doesn't do anything. It just sits there, and the code tells it to wait 1 second and then hide this label. And I set all these labels up the same as I did the first. I think maybe these sizes might be different in the settings. 48, but it hides the loading label, and then it shows the ready button. and then the player can press ready. So it just kind of simulates a loading. And you can see I have a button connected to a signal, and I'll explain the signals here shortly. So I have a pause control, and for saving purposes, I added a best score. Let me go over this because we are going to learn how to save in this tutorial. I do have a save system set up, and we're going to learn pausing. And I have a pause system set up that works rather well, and there's some tricks and things you got to do for music and stuff that we'll have worked out, and I'll show you along the code line. So we have this amount here, and I did the same thing as I said, best score label amount. Dot text will always equal our best score. And so in pause control, if we open that up, and I can actually hide this one, and then open pause control, and this is a little different where I do have two backgrounds, which I don't need to, but technically I wanted the second one so it can show our score while the player is paused. I should probably hide the pause menu or remove the resume button and allow them to use the pause menu to unpause the game, but in this case I didn't. So if you see that these buttons are a couple of unique buttons that have quite a few unique settings in all of our ready button, our resume button, and our quit button. We'll do some unique settings for those. So I'm just going to quickly show you that we have the buttons here. This is a check button, and this is a check button. These are just regular buttons with text in them. You can place the text inside them. So let me just explain some of this. These are not positional sounds. These are just regular sound notes. And the reason why I have so many of them is because typically Godot can only play one sound at a time. There is a thing called here max polyphony, which plays more sounds than one, and that can create a little bit of an issue too. When you play more than one sound, the sound level jumps up much higher. So that is why this is reduced to 20, negative 20. And most of them I have reduced down because the audio in these players are typically very loud compared to the sound in your instruments that are being used to play the devices used to play your games or your apps. So I always try to set them down. First I check out how loud they are on my telly or my phone, and then I just adjust these sounds to that. And I found that negative 20 on these would be good. So with that being said, there's not much else more that we'll do with our sounds here. We'll just play. Now let me get started on these buttons because there are quite a few things that we're going to go over on these buttons. So first we have here a text that we can set in there, and as I said, I have this resume. And if we take a look here, this is just for temporary. I'm going to set it to toggle mode, and I'll reset it back afterwards. But if we push button pressed, you can see that the text changed, and it kind of moved a little bit, and the button changed its view or its image some. So, and those are over here that I provided for you. And let's see, if we scroll down here, there's another setting that on all the buttons I set this focus, go into the mode, and set focus to none. And you'll see what that means when we play the game. And for a demonstration, you'll see what it would do. I'll turn the one off for resume, and then we'll go back in and set it when we test it out. I'll play it and show you before we do that. So we have here, if you go down, you can in fonts, in the theme overrides, you can set the fonts just like you do in the labels. Most nodes, if they have theme overrides where if they're control nodes and they have a font section, you can add a font to it, change the sizes, and usually have a lot more options that you can change here. I did set the font color in here for when it's pressed to just stay black, and the reason, I mean, just the font color just to be black, but I didn't change any of the other ones. We handled the other ones in our styles. Now, what styles is a unique thing that Godot does that allows you to change what the button textures actually look like. So if we see our normal texture here, and I have our normal texture pasted in over here, and that is actually where you see the button at. So you don't the icons are actually here. So I'm setting the image of the button here. I gave you gray buttons so you can change the color of the buttons to anything you like, as well as all the characters really. Everything in this game is for the most part scalable to be whatever size, and later on we can even get into bigger games and possibly even do something like a double puzzle game. Um, the the AI is probably more on the horizon than other ones. Now in hover, I did a little bit different. See, hover and press are kind of the same. So whenever you're hovering, the button's probably going to be pressed in our case. So I made them look the same, except I did one thing different, and I added some expand margins, and I gave them 2 ticks. And you can see here on content margins where I have the bottom set up on both of these, and you can see where right and left is, and that's because of the button size. I wanted to make the button where the text, this content margins control everything that sit inside of it. So as you can see here, it's sitting at 16, and if I changed it, you can see that it will drop down. Now that's because it's in the center point of where the normal button sits. So wherever the button goes, that's its normal point, and that's where that text sits. So that's why I have it set on an offset of minus 16. So no, I think it was 16. 16, so it sits center at a newer position, and then I'll show you as well when we have our hover is the same, like I said, except for these expand margins. And also, if you're doing content margins, style normal is will make everything kind of conform to the style as long as it's not something offset in the style itself. Okay, so we have here 10 when it's pressed, and if we go back up here to press and we see, and I go back down here and I change this now to 16, you can see that it moved. I mean, I want to set it at 10, or do I want to set it at 16? Probably looks better, but for my case, I chose 10. So you can see that the text changed white, and that's because I didn't do anything with it, and you can. And I changed the color in all the buttons, as I said. And focus is the same. We'll consider it to be the same as if the button is pressed, because really it only grabs focus when the button is pressed. Hover will give you a different kind of focus, and if I left that off, you would see, or if I changed it, you would see something even more different. So when we have focus, is basically when the button has grabbed focus, and that's typically with pressed. So I have it sitting the same as pressed, and there is no difference with the expand margin on this one or anything else. I just left it exactly the same. And so that is with all the buttons. With the check buttons, I did do this, and remember this is important. I did change the font, and I changed the font in here, And with check buttons, they have a little bit of a unique way of getting their texture. They don't have anything up here that really can help you out. Text behavior, you can change where the alignment is. We won't mess with any of this. Check buttons usually come toggled, and that's what we want. That's fine. And you can see that we set minimum sizes, and the position you can set anywhere. That's entirely up to you. And here we go with our style for button. There's another unique style called a style box empty. So you'll see what that means when we play. It will not grab focus when we press it. And even though we set this to not grab focus, it will still grab focus. So it just will hold the focus, I guess. So it'll look different when you press the button. It's text I set at 48, and let's see. So that looks about it for these buttons. And alright, so we have this all ready here to first just show oh yeah, just a quick demo test. And let me hide what is supposed to be hidden. Nope, that's the wrong one. Nope. We don't want to hide our animating control. We just want to hide these nodes because we don't want them to be seen until they're actually processed. And now for our tile map, we'll show it. And I'm not going to get into the tile map. I'll explain it later in the next tutorial. But this is just so we can run the game. I have to show it. Go ahead and show the loading. And now let's press play. Let's see what we're working with here. So that is what happens when we press, when we make the focus. See how it's extending the margins. And that's why I just extended the margins. And you'll see when I push press to play, see how it went down. And you won't see any whiting there or anything. And the game starts out. And who it might be if I didn't do a shameless plug for Pog Studios. As you can hear these sounds going, they get louder. Now, there's some settings that I made to where the sounds will only play when, like this, when you're doing that. So, there's that. And these are modulated, they're clear right now. Let's take a look at the pause. So when we pause the menu, now see how this is highlighted, and this one is not. So if I press it, you see that. Now, we see resume has been stuck in, I didn't turn it back off, did I? It's stuck in toggle mode and is pressed. So let's go back to resume, and we can do this live here. Toggle mode is on and it's pressed. So let's go back to the game, and then we go, it goes back up. Now when we press it, you can hear the music play. And that's it for the notes. So let's see here. I don't know why it didn't show you what happens when we don't set this, but that's fine. I'm going to go back in and set it anyways as my catch-all, as I do for most things. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial where we're going to go over the tile map. And then after that, we're going to get into the coding, and we're going to cheat a lot, so be prepared and be ready. The full project will be ready to be downloaded, and you'll be able to use it for more or less a stepping stone. So I appreciate you guys giving a like and even subscribing and leaving a comment. Thank you.